Dear ladies and gentlemen, what would you do if, at a glamorous party surrounded by toasts and dazzling lights, the brother-in-law you had always tolerated casually poured an entire glass of red wine over your head in front of your laughing in-laws? He humiliated you, claiming your very existence was an eyesore that held back his success. In that moment of ultimate humiliation, would you cry, would you run away, or would you do something no one could ever expect? I chose the third option. Amidst their obnoxious laughter, I coldly picked up my phone and made a single call, firing my new executive immediately. My husband's family froze, then burst into even louder laughter. They said I had gone insane from sheer frustration. My husband turned pale, begging me not to make a fool of myself. But they did not know that it was not a crazy delusion. It was a direct order. And by the very next morning, the smiles on their faces would completely vanish, replaced by a sheer terror they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Soft jazz music, the clinking of crystal glasses, and lively chatter filled the luxurious suburban estate of my parents-in-law. Today was a special day, a day our entire family threw a massive party to celebrate Carter, my precious brother-in-law, being promoted to director of sales for a massive corporate conglomerate. Carter was the pride and joy, the shining sun of this family. He was young, handsome, and smooth-talking. And now, at 28, he sat in a position countless people could only dream of. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was visibly ecstatic today. Wearing a crimson designer evening gown, she walked around greeting everyone, showing off her brilliant son with undisguised pride. My husband, Harrison, was also thrilled for his younger brother. He stood next to Carter, patting his shoulder and offering congratulations. They looked exactly like the picture-perfect, successful American family. As for me, who was I in that flawless painting? I was Eleanor, Harrison's wife, Carter's sister-in-law. But in the eyes of my husband's family, I was just a fading shadow, a wrong note in their symphony of success. Harrison and I fell in love during college and decided to get married. But our marriage was never approved by my mother-in-law from the very beginning. In her eyes, I was not from the right side of the tracks. My family was just an ordinary working-class household from a small Midwestern town, while her family was old money with successful children. She always assumed I was a gold digger who would use some cheap trick to seduce her son. Throughout my 5 years as a daughter-in-law, I tried my best to fulfill my duties, enduring all her scrutiny and criticism, just hoping that one day she might accept me. I was just an ordinary office clerk with a minimum wage paycheck, completely inferior to Harrison, a regional manager, and especially to Carter. Because of this, I had no voice in this house. At today's party, I looked more like a hired maid than a family member. I quietly moved around the kitchen, helping to clean up and serve food. Occasionally, as I passed by the living room, I would hear my mother-in-law praising Carter to the skies. See, my Carter is just that brilliant. Only 28 and already a director at Sterling Enterprises, one of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the country. His annual salary is in the mid-six figures, plus heavy stock options. Then she glanced in my direction, dropping a heavily implied remark. A successful son brings blessings to the house, unlike certain women who are too complacent, have no ambition, and only serve as a burden to their husbands. I heard everything, and my heart ached. But I was far too used to that sarcasm. I just kept my head down and walked quickly into the kitchen, pretending I heard nothing. When the party reached its peak, Carter, slightly buzzed from the drinks and cheered on by the crowd, stepped up to the podium. Holding a glass of red wine, he looked incredibly triumphant. He spoke about his personal efforts, his bright future, and did not forget to thank his mother for always believing in him. After the speech, the room erupted in applause. Carter stepped down, walking around to receive congratulations. As he passed by me, who was carrying a fruit platter, he suddenly stopped. He looked me up and down with contemptuous eyes and smirked. "Well, sister-in-law, why do not you come over and toast to my success?" I fumbled. "Oh, congratulations, Carter. I wish you even more success." I spoke in a tiny voice. "Just a congratulation?" He laughed loudly. "I am in a great mood today. Sister-in-law, why do not you drink this whole glass with me?" He shoved a glass of red wine in front of my face. I quickly waved my hands. "No, I do not drink alcohol, Carter." "You do not drink? Or you just do not respect me?" His voice suddenly turned harsh. "Or do you think a director like me is not worthy of sharing a drink with you?" All eyes turned toward us. My mother-in-law, standing nearby, not only did not intervene but actively joined in. He offered, "So just drink a glass with your brother. Why are you so rigid as a sister-in-law?" Backed into a corner, I reluctantly took the wine glass. But before I could bring it to my lips, Carter snatched it back. He looked at me, a vicious smile appearing on his lips. "If you do not know how to drink, then never mind. Let me help you enjoy it a different way." With that, He tilted the glass and casually dumped the entire glass of red wine right over my head. The freezing wine ran from my hair down to my face and neck, completely soaking the custom white silk cocktail dress I had taken so much effort to prepare for today's event. The entire room froze for a split second, and then a few giggles began to echo. I stood rooted to the spot, my whole body trembling from the cold and the humiliation. "Carter, what are you doing?" My husband rushed over but only dared to utter a weak question. Carter pushed his older brother's arm away, pointing right at my face, speaking loudly for everyone to hear. "Someone like you does not deserve to sit at the same table as this family. Look at yourself, so tacky and pathetic. Your very existence just hurts my eyes and ruins the image of a new director like me. If you know what is good for you, pack up and get the hell out of this house." His words were like a knife stabbing straight into my heart. And then my entire in-law family, the relatives, everyone burst into laughter. They laughed at my pain, at my humiliation. My mother-in-law nodded, looking extremely satisfied. Even my husband just stood there, helplessly watching his wife being degraded without daring to do a single thing. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes. But no, I would not cry. I raised my head, looking straight into Carter's face, then swept my gaze across those mocking faces. My eyes no longer held fear, only a terrifying coldness. I slowly pulled my smartphone out of my pocket. Amidst that loud laughter, I calmly dialed a number. "Arthur, it is me." People looked surprised, and the laughter died down slightly. "I need you to do something for me. Fire the new director of sales named Carter Vance immediately." Silence blanketed the room. Then, like a domino effect, everyone erupted into laughter again, this time even louder and more manic. "She has lost it. The shock made her go crazy," my mother-in-law said while laughing. Carter laughed until tears streamed down his face. "Sister-in-law, you are quite the actress. Who do you think you are? The chairwoman of the board?" My husband turned pale and quickly snatched my phone. "Eleanor, are you insane? What are you doing? Apologize to Carter right now." I said nothing, just snatched my phone back, turned around, and marched straight upstairs to my room, leaving behind the mocking laughter and the absolute chaos. But I knew they would not be laughing for much longer. The bedroom door slammed shut, separating me from the noisy, hypocritical world outside. Their sneers and taunts still echoed, but I no longer cared. I stood before the mirror, looking at the woman reflected there. My wine-soaked hair dripped dark red drops onto the ruined white silk. My face was pale, but my eyes were blazing. A fire of resentment and determination had never burned so fiercely. 5 years. For 5 years I had endured, tolerated, played the role of a gentle daughter-in-law and a submissive wife. I had abandoned my true self, abandoned my power and status, just in exchange for a normal life, a love I mistakenly thought was sincere. But what did I get in return? Contempt, disdain, and today's humiliating glass of wine. Enough. My endurance had reached its absolute limit. It was time to bring the curtain down on this charade. I calmly walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and washed away the stench of the wine and the humiliation from my body. When I stepped out, I put on a simple set of pajamas. I sat on the bed and picked up my phone. The screen was still glowing. The call with Arthur had not ended. I brought the phone to my ear. My voice held not a single tremor, only its inherent coldness and authority. "Arthur, did you hear my order clearly?" "Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I heard you perfectly." Arthur's voice on the other end was entirely respectful. "I will have the legal team draft the termination papers immediately. Tomorrow morning, the moment he steps into the corporate office, the termination letter will be handed directly to him. All procedures will be handled cleanly, leaving no legal liabilities." "Good," I replied shortly. "Also, launch an immediate audit into the entire hiring and promotion process of Carter Vance. I want to know who pulled the strings to put such an incompetent, arrogant fool into a director position. Find out everything and handle it ruthlessly. I do not want a single parasite left in my corporation." "Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I will execute this right away." I hung up. Everything was set. A storm was about to crash down on the family currently drunk on their victory. The bedroom door suddenly flew open. Harrison, my husband, walked in, his face full of anger and anxiety. "Eleanor, have you completely lost your mind? What the hell was that stunt? Do you realize how much you just humiliated me in front of the whole family?" I did not look at him, just quietly dried my hair. Humiliated? Compared to you standing still watching your brother pour wine over your wife's head, letting your entire family degrade me, what is your little humiliation worth? Harrison was struck speechless. He looked flustered, then shifted to a pleading tone. "I am sorry. I was just too shocked at the time. I did not know what to do. Carter is drunk. Do not hold it against him. Just come downstairs later, Say a quick apology to everyone, and it will all blow over. Please, do not make this any worse. I am begging you. I gave a faint, bitter smile. I have to apologize? For what? For being humiliated? Or for not being submissive enough to let you people keep trampling on me? Eleanor, why are you talking like this? Harrison frowned. And what about that phone call just now? Who did you call? What Arthur? Who are you trying to scare? Who do you think you are, having the power to fire a director at a massive corporation? Stop making a fool of yourself. Go downstairs and apologize to Carter right now before he gets really angry. If he complains to his superiors, my job might be on the line too. So that was it. He was not worried about me, not worried about his wife's dignity. He only cared about his regional manager chair, terrified of being dragged down by his brother. The selfishness and cowardice of this man disgusted me all over again. Harrison, get out. I spoke in a tired voice. I do not want to talk to you right now. No, you have to come downstairs with me. He grabbed my arm. I am not going. You can figure out what to say to your mother and everyone else. I violently yanked my arm away. That is your problem. Since you could not protect me, do not force me to keep acting in this fake happy play anymore. Eleanor, Harrison was about to say something else, but seeing my ice-cold glare, he faltered. He knew the woman he saw tonight was different, no longer the gentle, compliant Eleanor he knew. He sighed and walked dejectedly out of the room. Have it your way. I hope tomorrow morning you will calm down and not let a moment of anger ruin everything. Ruin everything? I was rebuilding everything. Rebuilding my true self and destroying the fake world I had endured for 5 years. I locked the bedroom door. I knew tonight would be a long night, and tomorrow, when the sun rose, it would be Judgment Day. To understand why I, a wife and daughter-in-law who always appeared submissive and mild, possessed such terrifying power, I must tell the story of my life. A story I had buried deep within my heart for 5 years, completely unknown to anyone, even the husband who shared my bed. I was not born into an ordinary family. My father was Richard Sterling, the founder and chairman of Sterling Enterprises, one of the largest multinational conglomerates in America. I was his only daughter, the default heir to a massive empire. From a young age, I lived in ultimate luxury, surrounded by the most expensive things money could buy. I attended prestigious Ivy League schools and traveled the world. To outsiders, my life was a dream, a fairy tale any girl would envy. But only insiders like me understood that living in a gilded cage comes with its own miseries. My life was pre-programmed, with no room for personal choices. I had to study subjects I hated, socialize with people I had no affection for, just because my father said it was good for my future, good for the corporation's business. I was always surrounded by sycophants, relationships built on deceit and calculation. The men who approached me, I never knew if they loved me or just the massive fortune I was set to inherit. I craved a normal life, a life where I could be myself, be loved sincerely, not for money or status. When I was 22, after finishing my MBA at Wharton, a massive tragedy struck. My father died suddenly of a massive heart attack. My entire world collapsed. He was my only remaining relative on Earth, as my mother had passed away when I was very young. Amidst the grief of loss, I had to face a colossal burden, taking over the position of chairwoman, managing thousands of employees and billions of dollars in assets. But right at that moment, my disgust for high society and corporate warfare reached its peak. I did not want to live my father's life. I wanted to live my own. I made the craziest decision of my life. I decided to temporarily vanish. I secretly convened a board of directors meeting. To everyone's astonishment, I appointed Arthur Pendleton, the vice chairman, my father's most loyal and brilliant partner, as the interim CEO to manage everything in my place. I stated that I needed time to rest, travel, and find my balance. All information about me was to be kept strictly confidential. Arthur was the only person who knew where I was and what I was doing. Arthur initially opposed this vehemently, arguing it was too dangerous. But seeing my absolute resolve, he had to accept. He only made one request, Madam Chairwoman. You can go wherever and do whatever you please, but please always keep in touch with me. And whenever you need, I and this entire corporation will stand right behind you. And so, I started a new life. I packed away my designer clothes and expensive jewelry. I created a completely new background for myself, an orphan, a graduate from an average state college, looking for work. I wanted to experience an ordinary life, earn money through my own labor. And most importantly, I wanted to find true love. I got an entry-level office job at a small company with just enough salary to survive. And there, I met Harrison. He was the regional sales manager there, a mature man who was articulate and had a warm smile. He was drawn to my simplicity and gentleness. He had no idea who I was. He only loved me, an ordinary office clerk. For the first time in my life, I felt sincere, unselfish love. I fell in love with him, passionately. We quickly moved toward marriage. On our wedding day, I lied to him and his family that I was an orphan with no living relatives. I refused all financial help from Arthur. I wanted my marriage built on an equal foundation, with no financial disparity. I believed this was the peaceful harbor I had searched for so long, but I was wrong. Life is not a fairy tale, and sometimes love is not big enough to overcome the prejudices and pressures of reality. The early days of our marriage were truly the happiest months of my life. Living in a small apartment, cooking home meals, waiting for my husband to come home from work, these were simple things I had never dared to dream of before. Harrison was a very good husband back then. He loved and pampered me, always proud to have a beautiful, sweet wife. I thought I had found true happiness, a happiness completely unrelated to wealth or status. I was fully content with my role as an ordinary wife and almost forgot my true identity. I only kept in touch with Arthur through a secure phone line, occasionally checking on the company and regularly reading the reports he emailed me. Everything at Sterling Enterprises was thriving under his management. But that peace began to crack when we moved in with my mother-in-law. Initially, when Harrison introduced me, Margaret was thoroughly displeased. She criticized me for being an orphan with no family background, unworthy of her son, a talented manager. But because Harrison loved me so much at the time, she reluctantly accepted it. However, once we lived together, her prejudices only deepened. She nitpicked everything I did, from how I spoke and walked to how I cooked and cleaned. No matter what I did, it was never perfect in her eyes. She constantly compared me to the daughters of her wealthy country club friends, dropping hints that Harrison was foolish to marry a poor wife who brought zero value to his career. Especially when Carter, the younger brother, graduated college and quickly secured a high position at a major corporation, ironically my own corporation. Her disdain for me became blatant. She constantly praised Carter while degrading me. At family dinners, she would put the best cuts of meat on Carter's plate, while I practically did not exist to her. She considered Carter's career the ultimate measure of success, and my complacency as proof of utter incompetence. Carter, spoiled by his mother since childhood, quickly developed an arrogant and bossy attitude. He treated me like a live-in maid, constantly ordering me around and speaking to me in a condescending, disrespectful tone. He never called me his sister-in-law, just addressing me rudely. But what broke my heart the most was not my mother-in-law's cruelty or my brother-in-law's insolence, but Harrison's attitude. He, the husband I loved so deeply, gradually changed. He no longer protected me from his mother's criticisms. Instead, he constantly advised me to endure, to cater to his mother to keep the peace. He started feeling inferior and insecure when taking me to his company's parties, where the wives of other colleagues were successful, wealthy women. He started nagging about my minimum wage paycheck, telling me I needed to find a better job. His love for me seemed eroded by the pressures of money, status, and the constant whispering of his mother. He forgot that he once loved me precisely because of that simplicity and sincerity. I was deeply hurt by Harrison's change. Many times I wanted to tell him the truth about my identity. I wanted to tell him that if I wanted to, I could give him everything: money, status, power. But I held back. If I told him, would his love remain as pure as before? Or would he look at me with different eyes, the calculating, greedy eyes I feared so much? I still loved him, still hoping he would realize what truly mattered in life. And so, I chose to remain silent, continuing to play the role of the ordinary, submissive wife. I hoped my sacrifices would be rewarded, but I was wrong. My silence only encouraged them to push further. They assumed I was weak, that I had to rely on this family, so they trampled on me even harder. And the humiliating wine at Carter's promotion party was the final straw. It awakened my true self, a chairwoman who had slept too long in the shell of a gentle wife. It made me realize that blind endurance never brings happiness, only contempt. It was time to take back what was mine. The next morning the sun rose high, casting brilliant rays into the room, but it could not dispel the cold, gloomy atmosphere in the house. I woke up early, calmly preparing breakfast as if nothing had happened. My face showed none of yesterday's sorrow and misery, only a terrifying stillness. Harrison had not dared to sleep in the bedroom last night. He slept on the living room sofa. Seeing me, he hastily stood up, looking guilty and exhausted. "Eleanor, have you calmed down?" I did not answer, just quietly set breakfast on the table. My mother-in-law and Carter also came downstairs. Margaret kept a furious expression, shooting me a glare that could burn holes. Carter, however, looked incredibly arrogant and triumphant. He whistled as he walked around the house, as if he had just achieved something monumental. He had no idea these were his final moments of freedom. He had no idea that at the corporate headquarters, a cold decision had already been stamped in red and was sitting neatly on CEO Arthur Pendleton's desk, just waiting for him to arrive. Carter ate his breakfast hurriedly, then groomed himself, wearing the brand new designer suit he had prepared for his first day. "Well, I am off to work," he told Margaret. "Today is my first day as director. I have to arrive early to make a great impression. I will be home late tonight, so do not wait up for dinner." Margaret looked at her son with eyes full of pride and love. "Yes, have a safe drive, my wonderful son. Work hard and make sure certain people open their eyes." She did not forget to glare sideways at me as she finished her sentence. I just gave a slight smirk, a smile whose meaning no one could decipher. "Have a nice trip, Carter," I said, my voice light as air. Carter drove his brand new sports car, speeding away in joy and pride. He imagined the scene of walking into the company amidst the welcoming and admiring gazes of everyone. He imagined sitting in a luxurious corner office, giving orders to dozens of employees. He imagined a bright future full of power and money waiting for him. But he could never have guessed that all those dreams would shatter into ashes in less than an hour. When Carter pulled up to the corporation's front gates, he sensed something was wrong. The security guard, who had respectfully greeted him yesterday, now blocked his car, refusing to let him into the executive parking garage. "Where are you going, sir?" the guard asked, his voice ice-cold. Carter frowned. "I am the new director of sales, Carter Vance. Did you not get the memo?" "What director?" the guard shrugged. "I received no such notification. Please move your car to the public lot outside." Humiliated by a mere security guard, Carter was furious. But he tried to control himself, thinking maybe the system had not updated yet. He angrily parked his car outside and walked into the grand lobby of Sterling Enterprises. He expected a warm welcome, but no. Every employee walking past him only gave him a brief glance before rushing off to their work. Nobody greeting him. Their indifference made Carter incredibly uncomfortable. He marched straight to Human Resources, intending to demand answers. But the HR director, the woman who had warmly congratulated him just last week, now looked at him with strange eyes. "Mr. Vance, what brings you here?" "I am here to start work." "Where is my office?" Carter asked in a bossy tone. The HR director looked at him with a hint of pity. "Mr. Vance, I am very sorry. Please proceed to the CEO's office on the 45th floor. Mr. Pendleton has something he wants to discuss with you." Hearing CEO Pendleton's name, Carter felt a bit anxious, but quickly regained his confidence. He thought the CEO probably wanted to meet him personally to assign tasks. He adjusted his tie, stepped into the executive elevator, and went straight to the 45th floor. The CEO's office was opulent and intimidating. Arthur was sitting behind his desk, his face completely expressionless. Seeing Carter, he did not stand up, nor did he offer a seat. He simply motioned his chin toward the chair opposite him. Carter felt a chill at his cold attitude but tried to remain polite. "Good morning, sir. Did you call for me?" Arthur did not answer. He just silently slid a file folder toward Carter. Carter picked it up. The very first bolded line made him freeze. Termination of employment. He rubbed his eyes several times, unable to believe what he was reading. "Terminated? Why?" he stammered, his voice shaking. "I have not even started working yet. What did I do wrong?" "You did nothing wrong regarding the work." Arthur finally spoke, his voice cold as ice. "It is just that this corporation has no place for individuals with such poor moral character as yourself." "Poor moral character?" Carter was stunned. "What do you mean by that? I do not understand." "You do not need to understand." Arthur stood up, his gaze sharp as a knife. "You only need to know that this decision comes from the absolute highest authority, and there will be no further explanation. Your severance package will be processed by HR according to labor laws. Now, please leave my office and never set foot in this corporation again." With that, Arthur pressed the intercom button. "Security, come up to my office and escort a guest out." Carter slumped into the chair, his whole body turning to jelly. He could not believe it. The director dream, the brilliant future, everything was shattered in a single morning. He was fired ruthlessly and humiliatingly without even knowing the reason. He was dragged out of the office by 2 security guards, walking down the hallway under the curious, pitying stares of other employees. The humiliation and resentment reached a boiling point. He knew for sure someone was plotting against him, but he could never have guessed that the person who issued that ruthless verdict was the very sister-in-law he had degraded last night. Carter left the corporate headquarters like a man who had lost his soul. He no longer believed what had just happened. Everything occurred too fast, too suddenly, like a nightmare. He plummeted from the peak of prestige straight into the abyss of failure in just a few hours. He drove home in a daze, his mind completely blank. He did not know what to say to his mother, to his family, the people waiting at home for his good news. When he walked in, the whole family was already sitting in the living room. Margaret had prepared a lavish feast to celebrate her son's first day of work. Seeing Carter's disheveled, pale appearance, Margaret hurriedly ran over. "Carter, what is wrong? Did something happen? Why are you home so early?" Carter said nothing, just collapsed onto the sofa, holding his head in his hands. Harrison, my husband, also asked anxiously, "Are you okay? Did something happen at the company?" "It is gone. Everything is gone," Carter muttered, his voice hollow. "What is gone?" Margaret shook her son impatiently. "Spit it out. What is going on?" I got fired." Carter's words were like a lightning bolt striking the entire family. Margaret froze, staggering backward. Harrison's jaw dropped in disbelief. "Fired? How is that even possible? You have not even started yet. Did you do something wrong?" Carter looked up, his bloodshot eyes full of resentment. "I do not know. I did not do anything. They said the decision came from the absolute highest authority. They said the corporation has no place for someone with poor moral character like me. I am sure someone got jealous and framed me." "The highest authority," Margaret repeated, her face full of panic. "Who could that be? Who has that kind of terrifying power?" The whole family fell silent, trying to guess who could wield such monstrous authority. Suddenly, Margaret seemed to remember something. She snapped her head toward me, who had been sitting silently the entire time. Her eyes burned with resentment and accusation. "It is you! It is definitely you!" She pointed directly at my face, screaming, "You did this! Did not you? Last night you called someone. You cursed him. You really are a bad omen. You are pure poison. Ever since you entered this house, you have brought nothing but bad luck, and now you have destroyed my son's career too." I looked at her, my heart entirely unbothered. I had anticipated this reaction. With someone like her son was never wrong. Everything was always someone else's fault. "Mom, what are you saying?" Harrison quickly intervened. "How could Eleanor possibly have the power to do that? Stop being so unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" Margaret laughed manically. "Do you not see? Has anything gone right since she came to this house? All our bad luck comes from her. I said it from the very beginning. We should have never brought this burden into our home. Now open your eyes and see for yourself." She lunged at me, raising her hands as if to claw at me. "Tell me, did you do it? What kind of dark witchcraft did you use to hex my son?" Harrison hastily grabbed his mother, pulling her back. "Mom, calm down. Stop causing a scene." Amidst the chaos, I sat perfectly still. I slowly set my teacup down on the table, then raised my head to look straight into Margaret's eyes. Yes, my voice was not loud, but clear enough to cut through all the noise. I did it. The room plunged into silence once again. Everyone stared at me in shock, unable to believe what they had just heard. Harrison was the first to snap out of it. He looked at me like I was a monster. "Eleanor, what are you saying? Have you really gone insane?" Carter also looked up at me with unbelievable eyes. He probably still thought I was joking, just trying to provoke them. Margaret, after a few seconds of dead silence, burst into a savage laugh. "Ha ha ha. See?" She admitted it. "You really are crazy. Who do you think you are? Do you think you have the power to summon the wind and rain? Are you just living in your own delusions, you tramp?" "I am not crazy," I replied calmly. "And I am not delusional. I am simply telling the truth. I am the one who ordered your son fired." "You!" Margaret was so furious she could not speak, just stood there panting. "By what right? You are just a pathetic, low-level clerk making minimum wage. On what grounds do you dare speak those words?" "On what grounds? You will find out soon enough." I stood up. "But first, you should ask your precious golden boy how he treated me last night. You reap what you sow. Mother." With that, I did not bother looking at them for another second. I turned and walked straight up to my room, leaving behind a mess and people still drowning in confusion, anger, and utter disbelief. They still did not believe it. They still thought I had gone crazy. But I knew that very soon they would have to believe, and when that moment came, the terror they faced would be 100,000 times worse. After I went up to my room, the atmosphere downstairs must have devolved into absolute chaos. I could hear Margaret's wailing and cursing, the sound of Carter smashing things, and Harrison's weak attempts to stop them. They were like a disturbed hornet's nest, buzzing erratically in anger and panic. They still could not accept the fact that Carter, their pride and joy, could be fired so brutally. And they certainly could not believe that I, the daughter-in-law they always despised, had anything to do with it. In their minds right now, there was only one conclusion. I had gone insane and was talking nonsense just to exact petty revenge. They had no idea that the real storm had only just begun. I locked myself in my room for the rest of the day, not stepping out once. I needed a quiet space to prepare for the next act. I knew that with Margaret's nature, she would never sit still. She would definitely find a way to get to the bottom of this. And just as I predicted, by early evening, Harrison knocked on the door. He no longer looked angry. Instead, he appeared exhausted and pleading. "Eleanor, open the door, I need to talk to you." I opened the door. Harrison walked in, looked at me, and sighed. "Eleanor, I know you were wronged yesterday. I apologize, but you should not have said those things in front of everyone. You only made Mom angrier." "I do not care," I replied, my voice icy. "Eleanor, listen to me." Harrison grabbed my hand. "Mom and Carter are devastated. Mom has already made up her mind. Tomorrow morning, the whole family is going to the corporate headquarters. Mom wants to meet CEO Pendleton directly to get to the bottom of this. She thinks there has been some sort of mistake. She wants to apologize on Carter's behalf and beg him for a second chance." Hearing this, a faint smile rippled through my mind. Everything was going exactly according to the script I wanted. They were walking straight into the trap I had laid. "So what does that have to do with me?" I asked. Mom wants you to come along too," Harrison said hesitantly. "Mom says you are the one who caused this mess, so you have to go there to take the blame, to apologize along with everyone else. Eleanor, I know this is unreasonable, but can you just do this one thing for me, for this family? Please, consider it a favor to me." So that was it. She did not just want to go beg for her son's job. She wanted to drag me there to humiliate me, to pin all the blame on my head in front of the top executives. Two birds with one stone. She truly was venomous. "Why should I go?" I pretended to ask. "I did nothing wrong." I know you are not wrong," Harrison said quickly. "But you saw Mom. She is heavily agitated. If you do not go, she will not let this go. You just need to go and stand there. Mom and I will handle all the talking. Please, Eleanor." I stayed silent for a moment, pretending to hesitate. Then I nodded reluctantly. "Fine, I will go, but only out of respect for you." Harrison breathed a sigh of relief, visibly overjoyed. Thank you so much. I knew you were reasonable." He had no idea that my nod was not a compromise, but a declaration of war. I was giving them one last chance to willingly walk onto the stage of my judgment. The next morning, my husband's entire family woke up very early. Margaret, despite her eyes being swollen from crying, tried to dress as elegantly as possible. She wanted to project the image of a wealthy, high-status family. Carter, pale and lifeless, wore an old suit, following behind his mother like a ghost. Harrison paced back and forth, his face etched with anxiety. As for me, I wore my simple office attire, my face showing zero emotion. "What kind of outfit is that?" Margaret scowled at me. "You are going to meet an important executive and you dress like you are going to the grocery store? Do you not have anything more decent?" "This is all I have, Mother," I replied calmly. She glared at me and said nothing more. Perhaps she thought the more pathetic and tacky I looked, the easier it would be to pin the blame on me in front of Arthur. We all got into Harrison's car and headed straight to Sterling Enterprises headquarters. Throughout the drive, Margaret constantly instructed Carter and Harrison. "Later, when we meet Mr. Pendleton, you two must be extremely polite and tactful. Take all the blame. Show absolute sincerity. Big executives only care about respect. And you, Eleanor, you will stand perfectly still. Do not utter a single word. Understand? When I give the signal, you must get on your knees and apologize. Is that clear?" I just gave a non-committal hum to brush her off. The car finally arrived. When my in-laws stepped out, they were genuinely overwhelmed. The corporate skyscraper was towering, imposing, and majestic. The massive main lobby was paved with gleaming marble that reflected like a mirror. Dozens of sharply dressed employees bustled about. The atmosphere radiated absolute power and professionalism. Margaret and Carter, despite trying to act confident, could not hide their awkwardness and awe. They walked up to the reception desk, meekly stating they wanted to meet CEO Arthur Pendleton. The receptionist looked at them, then looked at me, a hint of confusion in her eyes, before saying, "Please wait one moment, ladies and gentlemen." She picked up the phone and dialed an internal extension. Just a few seconds later, an unbelievable scene unfolded. A scene that would leave my husband's entire family completely paralyzed right in the main lobby. Immediately after the receptionist hung up the phone, a strange silence fell over the normally bustling lobby. All the employees, from those walking around to those sitting at their desks, simultaneously stopped. They stood up, adjusted their attire, and turned their eyes toward us, or more accurately, toward me. The atmosphere suddenly became extraordinarily solemn. My husband's family had no idea what was happening. Margaret even thought people were admiring her family's elegant demeanor, so she puffed out her chest even more, trying to look aristocratic. Carter and Harrison looked around in total confusion. Right at that moment, the doors of the private executive elevator slowly opened. A tall, imposing man, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, stepped out. Behind him followed an entire entourage of assistants and secretaries. That man was none other than Arthur Pendleton, the powerful CEO my in-laws were desperately hoping to meet. Seeing Arthur personally appear, Margaret was as thrilled as if she had struck gold. She hastily grabbed her two sons' arms, rushing eagerly toward him, a sycophantic smile plastered on her face. "Oh, Mr. Pendleton, this is such an honor. We are just minor folks hoping to request a brief meeting with you. Why would you trouble yourself to personally come down to welcome us?" She extended her hand, intending to shake his. Harrison and Carter also quickly bowed their heads respectfully. "Good morning, Mr. Pendleton." But something completely unexpected happened. Arthur entirely ignored them. He brushed past Margaret and her two sons, who were standing submissively with their hands extended in midair, as if they were invisible. He did not even spare them a glance. He walked straight toward me, the person standing quietly in the back. My husband's family turned around in shock. All the employees in the lobby held their breath, watching. Arthur stopped in front of me, less than a foot away. Then, in front of hundreds of people, the powerful CEO of one of America's largest conglomerates bowed slowly at a perfect 90-degree angle, demonstrating absolute reverence. His voice rang out loud and clear, echoing across the vast lobby. "Madam Chairwoman, you arrived without giving me prior notice, so I did not prepare a proper reception." "Chairwoman." The entire space seemed to freeze in time. All sound vanished. I could hear the beating of my own heart. Margaret stood rooted to the spot, the sycophantic smile frozen on her lips, looking utterly ridiculous. Her eyes were wide, staring at me unblinking. Carter's entire body was shaking violently, his face as pale as a corpse. He looked at me, then at Arthur, then back at me, unable to believe the reality unfolding before his eyes. But the person in the deepest state of shock was probably Harrison. My husband, the man who had lived with me for 5 years, stood there with his jaw dropped, staring at his wife with entirely foreign eyes filled with confusion, terror, and absolute incomprehension. I looked at Arthur and gave a slight nod. "No need for the fuss, Arthur. I just brought my family here for a little tour." My voice was calm, but to my in-laws' ears in that moment, it sounded like thunder from a clear sky. "Family?" Arthur glanced coldly at the 3 people standing frozen like statues. "Madam Chairwoman, these people are..." I cut him off. "Everyone, please carry on with your work," I said to the surrounding employees, who were still standing at attention. Then I turned to Arthur. "Arthur, could you please escort everyone to my office? I have some family matters to resolve." "Yes, Madam Chairwoman, please step this way." Arthur bowed respectfully again, then personally gestured for me to head toward the private elevator. I slowly walked forward, brushing past my husband, my brother-in-law, and my mother-in-law. They still stood there, motionless as statues. As I passed Harrison, I could clearly see the trembling in his body. He wanted to say something, wanted to ask me, but his throat seemed blocked, unable to utter a single word. As the stainless steel elevator doors slowly closed, I could still see through the gap the image of those 3 people standing isolated and lost in the grand lobby, their faces filled with terror and despair. Their play had ended, and now, it was time for my play to begin. The elevator doors shut, and the space inside was so quiet I could hear my own heavy breathing. Arthur stood beside me, silent and respectful. The elevator ascended rapidly, but to me that time felt like a century. I was preparing for a final confrontation, a confrontation where every dynamic would be reversed, and all truths would be exposed. The elevator stopped at the top floor of the building, the 45th floor. The doors opened, revealing a space of immense luxury and authority. This was the floor reserved exclusively for the chairman of the board. The entire hallway was covered in imported wool carpets, the walls adorned with priceless oil paintings. Arthur led me down the long corridor, stopping in front of a heavily carved wooden door. "Madam Chairwoman, your office," he said, personally opening the door for me. I stepped into the massive office, which offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline through its giant glass walls. Every piece of furniture in the room was kept exactly as it was when my father was alive. The mahogany desk, the leather executive chair, and even the family photos placed neatly on the desk. It had been 5 years since I last returned here, but everything felt strangely familiar. I walked closer to the desk, running my hand over the cold surface. Memories of my father flooded back, making my heart sink slightly, but I quickly regained my composure. Today was not a day for weakness. I sat down in the chairman's chair, the chair I had spent 5 years avoiding. But today, sitting in it, I did not feel burdened. Instead, I felt an incredible sense of power and confidence. I was ready to face them as my true self, Eleanor, the chairwoman of Sterling Enterprises. My husband's entire family trudged into the room, looking utterly pathetic. Margaret seemed to have aged 10 years. Her face was vacant, her steps unsteady, requiring Harrison to hold her up. Carter was pale, keeping his head bowed to the floor, not daring to look up. And Harrison, he looked at me with a deeply complex gaze, a mixture of fear, resentment, and a hint of pleading. They stood in front of my desk, no one daring to speak a word. The air in the room grew thick. "Please have a seat," I said. My voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. I pointed toward the sofa set opposite me. They sat down timidly, looking like convicts awaiting sentencing. I took a sip of Earl Grey tea, then slowly set the cup down. "I am sure everyone has a lot of questions." I began. "Harrison, Margaret, and Carter. Does anyone want to ask me anything?" No one answered. They just sat in silence, heads bowed. The arrogance and insolence of yesterday had completely vanished, leaving only fear and humiliation. "If no one has questions, then let me speak," I continued. 5 years ago, I met and fell in love with Harrison. I thought he loved me for who I was, not for anything else. Therefore, I hid my identity. I gave up the life of an heiress, accepted a job as an ordinary office clerk, just to have a normal love, a simple family. I thought that was happiness. I paused, looking straight at Harrison. He did not dare look back at me. But I was wrong. The simple life I desired was not peaceful at all. Over the past 5 years as a daughter-in-law, what have I had to endure? Perhaps Mother knows best. I turned to Margaret. "You always looked down on me, calling me poor, saying I was not from the right side of the tracks. You constantly criticized and nitpicked every little thing I did. I always endured, always tried to please you. But in your eyes, I was never good enough, was I, Mother?" Margaret trembled, clutching her hands tightly, unable to speak a word. I turned to Carter. "And you, the precious brother-in-law, you never once treated me as family. In your eyes, I was just a maid, a parasite in your house. And the climax was last night when you humiliated me, pouring wine over my head in front of everyone. Did you enjoy trampling on someone else's dignity?" Carter lowered his head even further, his shoulders shaking. Finally, I looked toward Harrison, the husband I had once loved more than my own life. "And you, Harrison, you are my greatest disappointment. You promised to love and protect me for the rest of your life. But then what? You let your mother and brother humiliate me. You never once stood up to defend me. You let your insecurities about money and status blind your love. Do you even remember why you fell in love with me in the first place?" Tears began to roll down Harrison's cheeks. He looked up at me, his voice full of remorse. "Eleanor, I am sorry. I know I was wrong." "Sorry?" I gave a bitter smile. "For 5 years I waited for you to say that. But now it is too late. The truth has been exposed, the grievances aired, the dynamic completely reversed. I am the one holding the gavel now. And I know the sentence I hand down to you all will hurt more than any punishment." Silence swallowed the massive office, leaving only Harrison's choked sobs and Margaret's heavy, rapid breathing. Carter remained motionless, burying his face in his hands, terrified to look up. The velvet curtain hiding their so-called respectable, happy family had been mercilessly ripped away by me, exposing all the ugly, rotten, and hypocritical things inside them. These people, who once stood on a pedestal of superiority, who used venomous words to judge and degrade me, were now sitting there like condemned sinners awaiting judgment from their own victim. "Eleanor, my wife!" Harrison cried as he dragged himself over to my desk, suddenly dropping to his knees. His action surprised me a little. "I know I have been a terrible husband, a coward of a man. I failed to protect you, I let you suffer so much humiliation. I was wrong, Eleanor, I was so wrong. Please, please forgive me. Give me a chance to make it right, to make it up to you. I promise I will change. I will never let anyone bully you again. We can start over, can we?" He looked up at me, his face drenched in tears, his eyes filled with pleading and regret. If I were the Eleanor of yesterday, I might have softened. I might have believed those tears, those empty promises. But the Eleanor of today was different. My heart had calloused after too much trauma. I looked at him, my gaze unwavering. "Harrison, stand up. You do not need to do this. There is nothing left to say between us." "No, I will not stand up." Harrison shook his head violently. "I will not stand up until you agree to forgive me. Eleanor, I still love you so much. These past 5 years, yes, sometimes I felt insecure, Sometimes I listened to Mom and treated you poorly. But deep down, I never stopped loving you. It is just, I was so stupid. I did not realize what was most important. Now I understand. Money, status, it is all an illusion. You are the only person I truly need. Please do not leave me. He tried to crawl closer, intending to grab my legs, but I rolled my chair back, maintaining the distance. Love? I scoffed, a smile more bitter than poison. You say you love me, yet you stood still while your mother and brother humiliated me. You say you love me, yet you worried more about your own job than your wife's dignity. Harrison, that is not love. That is selfishness. You only love yourself. You are begging me now not because you love me, but because you are terrified. You are terrified knowing I am the chairwoman of this corporation. You are terrified of losing the comfortable life, losing the status you currently have. Am I right? My words were like a dagger piercing right into his darkest secrets. Harrison froze, completely unable to deny it. Indeed, how much of his regret was actually love, and how much was just greedy regret and fear? Perhaps even he could not answer that. Seeing her son in such a pathetic state, Margaret finally snapped back to reality. She stopped crying and forced herself to stand, staggering toward me. Eleanor, daughter-in-law, she called out to me. Her tone had completely changed. The venom was gone, replaced by a sycophantic, groveling desperation. I know I was wrong. I am old and foolish. I treated you terribly. Please, have a big heart and forgive me this one time. I am begging you, do not leave Harrison. He truly loves you. Our family cannot survive without you. She started weeping and pleading. A new play was being staged. This time, the role was the pitiful, remorseful mother-in-law. Carter, seeing his mother and brother acting like this, also hurriedly ran over and threw himself onto the floor. Sister-in-law, I am an animal. I am not human. I dared to treat you like that. I deserve to be punished. You can hit me, curse me, however you want. I just beg you, please leave me a way out. Do not fire me, please. If I lose this job, my entire life is ruined. I am begging you. All three of them, people who less than 24 hours ago were laughing at my pain, were now on their knees crying and begging at my feet. An ironic, cynical scene. Did they think a few tears, a few apologies could wipe away all the trauma, all the scars they had inflicted on me over 5 years? Did they think I was still that naive, soft-hearted Eleanor? They were wrong. Completely wrong. I sat in the chairman's chair, silently observing this family's performance of remorse. Harrison's tears, Margaret's groveling, Carter's kneeling, all of it was acted very well, very realistically. If it were a regular audience member, they might feel sympathy, might feel they deserved a second chance. But I, a person who had lived in their hypocrisy for 5 years, who had tasted every drop of bitterness from these very people, could see right through those tears and pleas. What was it? It was not genuine remorse. It was fear. They were afraid of losing their power and money. They were afraid of facing an uncertain future without the prestige of being the chairwoman's family. They were clinging to me not because they realized my worth, but because they realized the worth of the chair I was sitting in and the power it brought. I let them cry, let them beg for a long time, letting them expose every ounce of their pathetic nature. When I felt the play had gone on long enough, I finally spoke. My voice was calm, devoid of emotion, but carried a crushing weight that instantly silenced the crying in the room. Are you all done acting? My words made all three freeze. They looked up at me, expressions bewildered and slightly humiliated. If you are done acting, then stand up. My imported Italian marble floor is very expensive. It is not a place for you to casually kneel and dirty it. My words were sarcastic, yet demonstrated absolute distance, like an invisible wall erected between me and them. Harrison and Carter awkwardly stood up, not daring to look me in the eye. First, Carter. I turned to look at my brother-in-law, who was shivering like a thief. You asked me for a way out. You said if you lost this job, your life would be ruined. Well, let me ask you. Last night, when you poured wine on my head, when you degraded me as tacky and pathetic, wanting to throw me out of the house, did you think about leaving me a way out? Did you consider that for a woman her dignity is more important than her life? Or did you think I, your sister-in-law, had no dignity at all? Carter choked, his face turning pale as he stammered. I did not mean it like that. I was so drunk. Drunk? I interrupted. Do not blame the alcohol. Alcohol only reveals a person's true nature. Your nature is pure arrogance, insolence, and contempt for others. You said you are an animal, not human. You are absolutely correct on that point. I nodded coldly. And Sterling Enterprises, an empire built by my father's lifelong dedication, is not a place to harbor inhuman parasites like you. The termination decision is final. That is the price you pay for your arrogance and stupidity. Not just at this corporation, but I will personally ensure that with this moral black mark on your record, no company in this industry will ever dare hire you again. You ruined your own future with your own hands. Hearing my cold, merciless verdict, Carter staggered as if he were about to collapse. Margaret quickly ran to catch her son, then turned to look at me. Her pleading eyes shifted, harboring a trace of resentment. Eleanor, do not be so cruel. Everyone deserves a second chance when they are truly sorry. He is young and foolish. He knows he was wrong. Give him a chance. I beg you. A chance? I looked at her, a sarcastic smile blooming on my lips. In 5 years, how many chances did you give me? Did you ever once treat me as a daughter-in-law, as family? Or in your eyes, was I just a poor nobody? A thorn in your side that needed to be plucked. You praised your youngest son while degrading your daughter-in-law. You enabled your eldest son, thinking he had the right to fool around. You believed all the faults belonged to us women. Your mindset is completely archaic and rotten, Mother. And Mother, I continued, my voice hardening. Do you know why Carter was hired and promoted so quickly? Did you genuinely think your son was a genius? I signaled to Arthur, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the room. Arthur stepped forward, placing a thick file on the desk. This is the preliminary investigation report regarding the hiring process of Mr. Carter Vance. He was hired based on a referral from our HR director, who happens to be a country club friend of yours, Margaret. And this HR director accepted a substantial bribe from your family, wire transferred directly from your personal account. His entire promotion track afterward also shows severe signs of bribery and kickbacks to direct managers. Madam Chairwoman, we will continue investigating and will prosecute all individuals involved to the fullest extent of corporate policy and the law. Arthur's words were the final bucket of ice water dumped over Margaret's head. Her pride in her brilliant son was nothing but a lie bought with money. She had nothing left to say, just standing there trembling in ultimate disgrace. Finally, I turned to Harrison. He stood there looking at me with eyes full of agony and despair. I took a piece of paper from my drawer and slid it toward him. It was a divorce petition I had already signed. Harrison, this is the only thing I want to say to you right now. Eleanor, please, no. He stammered, his voice hoarse. I know I was wrong, but our 5 years of love, can you really just throw it away that easily? Easily? I smiled, a smile sadder than crying. Do you know, Harrison? My love for you did not die in a single day. It died a slow death. Through every criticism from your mother that you met with silence. Through every time you looked down on me without realizing it. And it died completely the night you stood still watching your brother humiliate me, only fearing for your own career. A man who cannot even protect his own woman does not deserve to have love. We are truly finished. My decisive and ruthless words put a hard stop to our marriage. Everything was exposed, every sentence was delivered. Now it was time for them to face the consequences, to face the collapse of a family built on hypocrisy and arrogance. All 3 of them left my office in the most pathetic state imaginable. Margaret was vacant, having to be supported by Harrison and Carter like a dying woman. Carter was like a soulless corpse, his eyes unfocused, completely drained of the vitality of a young man. And Harrison, he was no longer crying, but his face was etched with ultimate agony and regret, an irredeemable loss. He held the divorce papers in his hand, a thin piece of paper that weighed 1,000 pounds. It was the death sentence for our marriage, and the end of the peaceful life he once knew. As they walked past Arthur, he simply gave a cold nod, signaling security to escort them out of the building, ensuring they would cause no further trouble. I sat alone in the massive office, watching their figures disappear behind the wooden door. When the door finally clicked shut, I allowed myself to let out a long breath, a breath carrying all the burdens and suppressed grievances of the past 5 years. My heart suddenly felt empty. I had won. I had executed the most spectacular revenge imaginable. I had made those who humiliated me kneel and beg, made them pay a heavy price for their arrogance. But why did not I feel the joy and triumph I had imagined? I only felt a deep exhaustion, a bitterness rising in my chest. I had destroyed their family, but at the same time, I had destroyed the marriage I had poured my heart into, destroyed the love I once cherished. Madam Chairwoman, are you all right? Arthur's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. He had returned to the room at some point, holding a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea that emitted a soothing aroma. I am fine, Arthur. I shook my head, forcing a smile, just feeling a little tired. I understand. Arthur nodded, his eyes showing deep sympathy. Going through a massive storm, anyone would feel this way. No matter how sturdy the ship, it cannot avoid some scratches. But everything will be all right. Time heals all wounds. What matters is that you bravely faced it and overcame it. He placed the hot tea on my desk. You did exceptionally well, Madam Chairwoman. You not only brought justice to yourself, but also helped the corporation eliminate parasites. The internal investigation is ongoing. Many more corrupt individuals will have to go. Those used to bribery and sycophancy. You have brought a new breath of life into this entire enterprise. I took a sip of the tea, its warmth spreading, making me feel slightly better. Thank you, Arthur. You have worked so hard for me over these past 5 years. If it were not for you silently holding the fort, I could never have gone undercover so peacefully. It is my duty, Madam Chairwoman. Arthur smiled, a rare occurrence. To witness you mature into the formidable leader you are today is my greatest joy, and surely the greatest joy of the late chairman. He is definitely looking down from heaven, incredibly proud of his daughter. Arthur's words warmed my heart. He was right. I was not alone. I still had him, and I still had my father's legacy. In the days that followed, exactly as I predicted, a massive earthquake truly struck my ex-husband's family. Carter, after being fired and realizing his future was permanently destroyed, completely broke down. He was no longer the arrogant golden boy. He locked himself in his room, doing nothing but drinking and drowning in endless drunkenness. He did not dare go out, did not dare face anyone. The humiliation and failure had completely crushed him. Margaret fell severely ill. The massive shock regarding both her sons, coupled with the disgrace in front of her relatives and neighbors, sent her to the hospital. But physical pain could not compare to her mental agony. Her greatest pride in life, her 2 successful sons. Now one was a failure, the other was getting a divorce. The model family she always boasted about had become the laughingstock of the town. But the person who suffered and agonized the most was probably Harrison. He did not sign the divorce papers immediately. He tried desperately to hold on. Every day, he sent me dozens of messages detailing his regret, begging me for one more chance. He even tracked down our mutual friends, asking them to put in a good word, hoping to sway me. He did everything except the one thing he needed to do: face and admit his core mistake. In his words, I still only saw regret over losing a wealthy, powerful wife, not genuine remorse for failing to protect and cherish me. His love was too tainted by calculation and insecurity, and I knew, even if we got back together, that crack could never be healed. Finally, after nearly a month of desperate clinging, faced with absolute silence from my end, Harrison had to accept reality. He signed the divorce papers. The day we went to court, he looked a decade older, his hair peppered with gray. He did not look at me, just kept his head down. When the judge declared us no longer husband and wife, I saw his shoulders tremble. I knew he was hurting, and a small part of me felt a pang of sorrow. After all, we had loved each other for 5 years. We had beautiful memories, but I knew my decision was right. I could not build my happiness on pity or a dead love. We both needed a new life, a new path. After the divorce, I officially returned to my true identity. The news of the Sterling Enterprises heiress officially emerging and taking the chairman's seat created a media frenzy. I began actively managing the corporation alongside Arthur. The work swept me away, helping me forget the sorrows of the past. I found a new joy, a new purpose in life. I wanted to continue developing my father's legacy, making Sterling Enterprises greater than ever. It was my way of honoring him, and also my way of affirming my own worth. I knew the road ahead would be thorny, but I was no longer afraid. The life of my ex-husband's family afterward was a long, bleak stretch of tragedies. Karma seemed to catch up with them sooner or later, and in a way no one could have anticipated. It came from the fractures within their own family. Carter, after a long period drowning in alcohol and despair, could never recover. The stigma of being fired by the chairwoman of Sterling Enterprises for moral misconduct and bribery followed him everywhere. No corporate company dared to hire him. Even the friends who once cheered him on now avoided him like a plague. From a pampered boy living in luxury supplied by his mother, he became unemployed, leeching off the meager savings she had left. His decline and dead ends changed his personality. He became abrasive and vulgar. He was no longer the golden child, but a true burden. He frequently came home to smash things, venting his anger on his own mother, whom he blamed for not having enough power to protect him. Margaret, after being discharged from the hospital, was much weaker. The shock and disappointment in her 2 sons had drained her life force. She was no longer the sharp, bossy Margaret of the past, but a senile old woman who constantly cried and cursed her fate. She had to sell her large suburban estate to pay off the debts incurred from bribing Carter's way into jobs and to afford living expenses for the 3 of them. They moved into a smaller, cramped apartment. Her pride and self-esteem were completely shattered. Every day, she not only suffered from physical ailments but also endured the nagging and mistreatment from the very son she had loved so blindly. Carter frequently demanded money to buy alcohol, and when refused, he would dig up the past to torment her. That was perhaps the most painful punishment for a mother who had spoiled her child with blind arrogance. As for Harrison, after divorcing me, his life was not easy either. Although he still held his regional manager position at his old company, I had not interfered with his job. The fact that his ex-wife was the chairwoman of Sterling Enterprises, one of his company's biggest clients, made his position incredibly awkward. Everywhere he went, he faced curious stares and whispers behind his back. His colleagues no longer looked at him with the respect due a manager, but with the eyes of a blind fool who had thrown away a gold mine. His superiors were wary, not daring to assign him important projects. The pressure and inferiority complex drained him of any motivation to work. His performance plummeted, and he was frequently reprimanded. His life became suffocating. He turned to alcohol for solace and started having brief, meaningless flings, but no woman could replace me. Not because he still loved me, but because no one could offer him the status and security I could. He lived in endless regret and torment. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. On the other end was Margaret's weak voice. She cried, recounting the family's dire situation. She said Carter had run away from home, taking the last of her savings and leaving behind a massive gambling debt. Ruthless loan sharks had come to her apartment, threatening her life. She begged me, pleaded for my mercy, asking me to remember our old ties and loan her some money to pay the debt, to save her old life. Listening to her, my heart did not waver. The last drop of pity I had for them had dried up. Mother, I still called her that one last time. The trouble your son caused, you and Harrison need to figure out how to solve on your own. It is no longer my problem. Then I hung up. I am not cruel, but I am not a saint either. My forgiveness cannot be given to people who mercilessly trampled on me. Everyone must take responsibility for their own lives and the mistakes they have made. Later, I heard Margaret had to sell the last cramped apartment to pay off Carter's debts. She had to move into a tiny, run-down rental room, surviving day by day on a meager pension. Harrison, after a long downward spiral, was finally let go by his company. He also became unemployed, forced to move in with his mother in that tiny rented room. An entire family that was once wealthy and prestigious had now fallen into absolute destitution, their future pitch black. That was the exact price they had to pay for their arrogance, greed, and habit of looking down on others. The wheel of karma had finally stopped at its rightful place. Not early, not late. As time passed, the wounds in my heart gradually healed. I fully integrated into my new life as a chairwoman. The busy schedule, massive projects, high-level executive meetings, and international business trips consumed my time. I found passion and excitement in running and expanding the empire my father left behind. I proved that I was not just a lucky heiress, but a truly talented and visionary leader. Under my guidance and Arthur's, Sterling Enterprises grew even stronger, not only maintaining its domestic dominance, but also expanding globally, securing massive international contracts. I fulfilled my father's dream and found my own worth. I no longer thought much about my ex-husband's family. They had become a part of the past, an expensive lesson I would never forget, a reminder of the complexity of the human heart and the price of weakness. Occasionally, I still heard snippets of news about them through old acquaintances. Margaret, after living in poverty for a while, passed away from illness in a cold, lonely rented room. On the day she died, only Harrison was by her side. Carter was still missing. Rumor had it he fled down to the deep south, living as a drifter on the streets. Harrison, after a long period of unemployment, had to take a job as a floor salesman at a small electronics retail store, living quietly day by day, not daring to look anyone in the eye. A family completely shattered, each facing a tragic fate. One late weekend afternoon, while taking a stroll through a large shopping mall to relax after a stressful work week, I unexpectedly ran into Harrison. He was wearing the uniform of the electronics store, standing at a small kiosk, trying to hand out flyers to passers-by. He looked so much thinner and older than his actual age. The handsome, charismatic demeanor of a manager was completely gone, replaced by an exhausted, hardened, and deeply insecure look. When he looked up, intending to hand me a flyer, he froze upon recognizing me. He stood rooted to the spot, the flyer dropping to the floor. He hurriedly turned his face away, trying to slip into the crowd. Perhaps he felt ashamed, not wanting to face me, but I called out to him, "Harrison." My voice was calm. He stopped, then slowly turned around, not daring to look me in the eye, just staring down at the tips of his shoes. Hi, Eleanor. Long time no see. How have you been?" I asked a normal, polite question, with no intention of sarcasm. He gave a faint smile, a smile full of bitterness and self-deprecation. "Surviving. Thank you for asking. Still being alive is good enough." We stood there in silence for a long time, the awkwardness and distance enveloping us both. I did not know what else to say, and perhaps neither did he. The past between us held too much pain. A few polite words could not erase it. "Well, I have to get back to work," he said, then hurriedly bent down to pick up the flyer, turning away as if trying to escape this unwanted encounter. Looking at his hunched, retreating back, a strange emotion swelled in my heart. I was no longer angry at him. I only felt pity. He was just a victim of his mother's toxic upbringing, of societal prejudices and pressures. He lost everything, not because he was an evil, wicked person, but because he was too weak and cowardly. He did not dare fight for his love, did not dare protect his wife, and ultimately lost both his love and himself. I knew this encounter was a final farewell, a complete closure to all the grudges of the past. My life after that continued peacefully and successfully. I had everything in my hands: money, status, career. I became the successful female role model that countless people admired. But sometimes, in the quiet dead of night, returning to my luxurious Manhattan penthouse, facing the four walls alone, I still felt a certain loneliness. I craved a shoulder to lean on, someone who could love the real me, not the chairwoman label. But I was also afraid. The scars of my first marriage made me cynical, no longer easily opening my heart to anyone. Arthur seemed to understand my feelings. He frequently introduced me to outstanding young men, successful young entrepreneurs, partners from the right backgrounds, but I refused them all. I did not want to repeat the mistakes of the past, did not want a relationship built on calculation and the weighing of social status. And then, during a business trip to Carmel by the Sea in California to scout a new luxury resort project, I met him. Not at a glamorous gala, but on a pristine beach at sunset. He was an architect, looking for inspiration for a new project. He had a rugged charm, a warm smile, and a profound soul. We met by chance and clicked instantly. He had no idea who I was. In his eyes, I was just a regular woman traveling alone, with a hint of sorrow in my eyes. He was drawn to my intelligence, my strength, and the hidden sadness in my gaze. Being with him, I felt I could be myself, living true to my emotions. I did not have to brace myself to appear strong, did not have to wear the mask of a cold CEO. I told him my story, a highly simplified version of it. He listened, offering no judgment, only empathy and understanding. He said he admired my resilience, and he would use his love to heal the wounds in my heart. Our love came naturally and gently, like a cool ocean breeze blowing away all my troubles. Our love was not loud or flashy, but quiet and deep, just like Julian himself. He was a brilliant architect, but chose a life of freedom, unrestricted, dedicating most of his time to traveling and creating. He was not intimidated by my status or wealth, things he only discovered much later. On the contrary, when he learned my true identity, he said he loved me even more. Because he understood that to get to where I was today, to sit firmly in that seat of power, I had to survive unimaginable storms and loneliness. He loved me, my soul, and cherished the scars of my past. He said those very scars made me the strong, admirable person I am today. He never tried to change me. He just quietly stood by my side as a solid pillar of support, a peaceful harbor I could return to after fierce corporate battles. With him, for the first time in years, I felt like a normal woman, loved and unconditionally protected. I did not have to force myself to be tough, did not have to wear the ice-cold chairwoman mask. I could cry when I was sad, laugh when I was happy, and share every thought and worry with him. He always listened, always understood, and gave me the most sincere advice. I told him my entire story, hiding nothing. He listened, judging nothing, just giving me a tight, empathetic hug. He said he admired my bravery and would use his love to heal my wounds, to fill the voids in my soul. Our love arrived naturally and beautifully, like a cool stream watering a soul that sometimes felt bone dry. A year later, during a trip to Paris, my favorite city, he proposed to me at the top of the Eiffel Tower exactly as the city lights came on. The ring he gave me was not a massive diamond, but a ring he designed himself, featuring a deep blue sapphire, the color of the sky, the ocean, of freedom and peace. He said he could not give me more money or power because I already had more than enough of those. He could only give me a sincere love, a warm family, and a sky of freedom so I could be myself. I agreed through tears of happiness, tears that no longer tasted bitter, but sweet with love. Our wedding was held on a romantic beach, attended only by family and our closest friends. I was no longer an orphaned bride. I had Arthur, my mentor, my second father, walk me down the aisle and hand me to the groom. His eyes were brimming with emotion. I had my friends, the colleagues who stood shoulder to shoulder with me through hardships. And most importantly, I had a man who truly loved and cherished me by my side. On my wedding day, I made a major decision. I retained my position as chairwoman of the board but handed the CEO role over to another brilliant executive that Arthur and I had carefully groomed. I wanted more time for my family, for my husband, and for our future children. I had learned how to balance work and personal happiness. After marrying, I did not abandon my career, but I was no longer a working machine. Julian was always my solid home front, supporting every decision I made. He never felt inferior to his wife's success. Instead, he was always proud of me and served as my endless inspiration. We had 2 children together, a boy and a girl, beautiful and adorable. Our home, a coastal villa designed by Julian himself, was always filled with laughter. I had found happiness, a complete and fulfilling happiness. A happiness I once thought I could never achieve. A happiness built on the foundation of respect, understanding, and sincere love. Occasionally, watching the kids play on the sand, I look back on my story. I traveled such a long road, survived so many storms, but I have no regrets. Those very storms forged the person I am today, a strong, independent woman who also knows exactly how to love and enjoy happiness. I realized that a woman's value does not lie in whether she has a rich husband, but in her independence, her autonomy, and her courage to love herself. When you know how to cherish and love yourself, true happiness will find its way to you. Life is always fair. Those who sow the wind will reap the whirlwind. And those who live kindly, stay strong, and never give up their faith will ultimately find the sunrise in their lives. My story ends here, as a message and a beacon of hope for anyone who has endured or is enduring pain and misfortune in life. Never break down. Stand up and write your own happy ending for your life story. Dear viewers, thus the dramatic journey from ultimate humiliation to the peak of glory of Eleanor has finally reached its conclusion. We have held our breath through every chapter of a turbulent life play, from the cruel splash of red wine over her head to the fateful phone call that changed everything, and finally bursting into relief during a spectacularly satisfying turn of events. This story is not just a satisfying tale of revenge. Deeper down, it is an expensive lesson about human value, the danger of arrogance and greed, and the extraordinary hidden strength inside every woman. Perhaps the first and most obvious lesson this story offers is a profound warning about respect in relationships, especially within a family. Eleanor's in-laws, a seemingly wealthy and successful family, carried a highly toxic mindset. They judged people entirely on material wealth and social status. They looked down on Eleanor because she was a low-level clerk from the wrong side of the tracks. They mistook her gentle, patient nature for weakness, believing she was meant to be trampled on. The wine Carter poured on her head was not simply the act of a drunken, arrogant man. It was the climax, the culmination of 5 years of continuous contempt and disdain. It was a public humiliation of her dignity, cheered on by an entire family. What is the lesson here, ladies and gentlemen? Never judge or treat someone based on their profession, background, or assets. Material wealth can never define the true value of a human being. A maid, a factory worker, or an office clerk, they all have honor and self-respect. And when that self-respect is trampled to its absolute limit, their pushback might just leave you terrified. Always treat everyone with respect, because you never know if the person you look down on today might hold your destiny in their hands tomorrow. The downfall of Carter and Margaret is also a costly lesson regarding arrogance and vanity. Carter, a young man who just stepped into a high executive position, immediately became drunk on power, giving himself the right to humiliate others. He forgot that there is always a bigger fish. He could never have guessed that the sister-in-law he despised was the biggest fish of all, the one who could end his career with a single phone call. Margaret, a mother who blindly praised her son, using money to bribe his way into corporate titles, ultimately swallowed a bitter pill. She taught her son arrogance but failed to teach him humility. She gave him money but gave him no character. Their fate is a profound reminder to all parents. Never spoil your children blindly. Teach them to respect others. Teach them the value of honest hard work. Because a career built on a foundation of lies and bribery will never last. It can collapse at any moment, like a sandcastle against the tide. But perhaps the character that leaves us with the most to think about is Harrison, the husband. He was not a purely evil or wicked man. He genuinely loved Eleanor once, but he was a coward, a weak man. He let his insecurities about money and the influence of his mother and brother erode his love. He did not dare stand up to protect his wife, choosing silence, and even becoming complicit in their wrongdoing. Harrison's belated regret after discovering his wife's true identity is a highly valuable detail. He cried and begged, but did he cry because he still loved her, or did he cry because he regretted losing a gold mine? The story shows us a brutal truth. A love that lacks the courage to overcome prejudices and pressures is never true love. and a man who cannot protect his woman through a storm does not deserve to be with her when the sky clears. This is a profound lesson for both men and women. Men, be a solid shoulder to lean on. Use your courage to protect the woman you love, rather than letting outside influences shake your feelings. And women, choose a man whose love is strong enough to stand by your side against the world, not a coward who hides behind you when trouble strikes. And finally, the greatest lesson, the deepest human value, lies in the character of Eleanor. Her story is an epic anthem to the hidden strength of women. For 5 years, she chose to hide her identity, living a normal, simple life. This shows that for her, happiness was not found in money or power, but in sincere love. She gave everything, sacrificed everything for that love. But when that love was betrayed, when her dignity was trampled on, she did not break. She shed the shell of a submissive wife to return to her true self. A strong, decisive, and immensely powerful chairwoman. Eleanor's actions were not just revenge, they were a declaration. A fierce declaration that, I can be soft because of love, but never mistake me for weak. I can be patient, but my endurance has limits. And when those limits are broken, you will face an entirely different person. Eleanor's uprising is an incredibly powerful source of inspiration for all women, those who have endured or are enduring injustice in their families and society. It shows us that inside every woman who seems fragile lies an extraordinary hidden strength. That strength can come from intellect, from status, or simply from self-respect and courage. Never underestimate yourself. Never allow anyone the right to define your worth. You have the right to live, to be respected, and to be yourself. If your current life does not bring you happiness, have the courage to change it. If the man beside you no longer deserves your love, have the courage to let go. When this door closes, another door, a better, brighter future is waiting for you. The ending of the story, where Eleanor finds happiness with a new man, a man who loves her for who she is, not for her status, is a profoundly beautiful conclusion. It shows us that after the storm, true happiness comes to those who deserve it. That happiness is not found in revenge, but in peace of mind. Eleanor did not drown in power and loneliness. She opened her heart again, dared to believe in love again, and she found a mature love, built on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. This brings immense hope. Even if you have stumbled, even if you have been hurt in love, never lose faith. Somewhere out there is still someone waiting to bring you the happiness you deserve. Through Eleanor's story, we want to send you a profound message. The true value of a person does not lie in a bank account or a title on a business card. It lies in character, in self-respect, and in how we treat those around us. Arrogance and contempt for others will sooner or later lead to a downfall. Only humility, tolerance, and mutual respect can build lasting relationships and a truly happy life. Live like Eleanor. You can be patient for love, but you must also be strong enough to protect your own dignity. Be like a lotus flower, growing in the mud but never smelling of it. No matter what circumstances you live in, always maintain your own aura and worth. What do you think about Eleanor's spectacular turn of events? And if you were in Harrison's shoes, would you have the courage to protect your woman? Please leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments section below, so we can all learn and improve ourselves together. If this story has touched your heart and brought you profound human values, please do not hesitate to hit the like button and share this video with the people you love. And most importantly, please hit the subscribe button